Hey everyone, welcome back to English Medium Podcast that helps you grow your English skills through real conversations and real-life situations. I'm Mike, and joining me as always is the wonderful Lily.
Hi, everyone. It is so great to have you here with us today. Whether you are listening during your morning commute, cooking dinner, or winding down before bed, we are genuinely happy you chose to spend this time with us.
And today's episode is one that I think every single person listening is going to relate deeply. We are talking about stress, confusion, difficult decisions, and the kind of week where everything seems to hit you at the exact same time.
That's right. Life doesn't always move along smoothly, does it? Sometimes it feels like you're sailing along just fine, and then all of a sudden, boom! Problems from every direction, work pressure, big life choices, and even the little things start to get under your skin.
And you know what's really interesting? English has some absolutely brilliant phrases for all of those feelings and moments. Phrases that real people use every single day in real conversations, not just in textbooks.
So today, we are going to teach you 9 of those phrases in a way that actually sticks. Not just definitions, but real stories, real examples, and real context, so that when you hear them or need to use them, they feel completely natural.
Here is how today's episode is structured. First, Lily and I will perform a short dialogue between two friends named Carlos and Nina. They are going through a pretty rough week, and their conversation is packed with the exact phrases we want to teach you.
Then, after the dialogue finishes, Mike and I will go through every single key phrase together. We will explain what each one means, give you clear examples, and share personal stories from our own lives to help you really remember them.
And here is our number 1 tip before we begin. Do not worry if you miss something the first time around. That is completely normal and honestly very much expected. You can always pause the episode, rewind a little, and listen again.
We actually encourage rewinding. The more times you hear a phrase used naturally in context, the faster it moves from your short-term memory into real, usable language. So please, use that rewind button without any hesitation.
All right, are you ready to meet Carlos and Nina and find out what kind of week they are having? Let us dive straight into the dialogue. Here we go.
Carlos, I am really sorry I am late. My head is all over the place this morning, and I honestly could not pull myself together enough to leave the house on time. Everything just feels scrambled.
Hey, don't even worry about it. Come sit down. You look exhausted, honestly. What is going on with you? Talk to me.
Okay, so here is the thing. I am dealing with this enormous situation that has been keeping me up at night for the past 2 weeks, and I genuinely do not know how to move forward. My brain feels completely muddled.
A muddle. Yeah, I can see that on your face. Something at work, or is this more of a life in general kind of thing?
Both, honestly. It started with work, but now it has spilled into everything else. The biggest thing is that I have 2 job offers sitting on my desk right now, and I cannot for the life of me decide between them.
Oh, wow. 2 offers at the same time? Okay, that sounds exciting on one level, but I can also see why that would make your head spin. Tell me about them. What are we working with here?
So the first offer is from a large financial firm in the city. The salary is genuinely impressive, significantly more than I am earning now. Great benefits, a prestigious name on my resume, really solid job security.
That sounds good so far. So what is the catch?
The work itself sounds completely soul-crushing, if I am being honest. It is mostly processing data, writing internal reports, sitting at a screen alone all day with very little human interaction or creativity involved. Safe, but completely joyless.
Right. And the second one?
The second offer is from a nonprofit that works with young people in underserved communities. The role involves designing programs, working directly with people, getting out into the field, making something genuinely meaningful happen every single day.
That sounds like it would suit you so much better, actually. So what is stopping you from just saying yes to that one?
The salary is barely half of what the financial firm is offering, and I have rent to pay, student loans still running, and a savings goal I have been working toward for 3 years. So now I am truly facing a massive dilemma: passion and purpose versus financial security and stability.
Yeah, that is a classic, genuinely hard dilemma. Both roads have real value and real cost attached to them. I can completely understand why you cannot just flip a coin and move on.
And it gets worse, Carlos. My current job is making everything feel 10 times heavier. My manager keeps adding responsibilities to my plate without any extra support, any acknowledgement, or any additional pay whatsoever.
That is not okay. You are already stressed about a massive decision, and they are piling more onto you at the same time?
Exactly. I feel completely trapped, like I am in a really tight corner. Whatever direction I try to move in, stay, leave early, ask for help, there is something blocking me or something I would be risking. Nothing feels clean.
I hear ya. And look, some of life's annoyances are manageable, right? Like when the coffee machine at work is broken for an afternoon, or someone takes your parking spot. Those things are mildly irritating. You notice, you sigh, and then you move on within an hour.
Ha, yes. Mildly irritating things are manageable. I can handle those. A bad coffee is not going to ruin my week.
But what you are describing is not that. This is the kind of thing that follows you everywhere. It is intensely annoying. It sits in your chest all day, shows up in your dreams at night, and makes even the smallest things feel unbearable.
You described it perfectly. Yesterday, someone in the office reheated fish in the shared microwave, and I had to actually leave the room before I said something I would regret. On a normal day, I would have just quietly opened a window, but right now I am at zero patience.
That is what happens when you are already completely maxed out. Your emotional buffer is gone. So the little things land like big things because there is no cushion left to absorb them.
I have been seriously thinking about just stepping back from everything. Stopping the constant trying and planning and fixing. Just letting things happen for a while instead of trying to steer every single outcome.
And honestly, that might be exactly what you need right now. Taking a back seat for a little while does not mean you are giving up or falling behind. It means you are being smart enough to rest before you completely run out of fuel.
I am trying to stay hopeful. I keep telling myself this cannot go on forever. Like somewhere ahead of all this noise and pressure, there is a quieter, calmer stretch waiting for me. I'm just struggling to see it right now.
But you can feel that it is there, right? That is actually huge. You are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, even if it is still pretty far away. That feeling that the worst part is nearly over, hold on to that. It is real.
I hope so, because my biggest fear is that I wait too long to decide and both job offers disappear. And then I have come to a complete dead end, stuck in the same place I am now, with no options and no way forward.
Okay, So let us think about this practically. Before you make any decision, the most important thing you can do is get to the bottom of both opportunities. And I mean really dig into them, not just what they told you in the interview rooms.
What do you mean exactly? I already read both job descriptions pretty thoroughly.
I mean, reach out to someone who is actually doing that job right now. Ask them what a regular Wednesday looks like. Ask them what the hardest part of the role is. Ask them what management is actually like day to day. Not the rehearsed answer, the honest one.
Oh, that is a really smart angle, actually. I could probably find someone through a professional network, or I could ask the hiring manager if there is a team member I could speak with informally before I give my answer.
Exactly. And while you are doing that research, you also need to get a proper grasp of your own priorities. Not the priorities you think you should have, the ones you actually genuinely have when you are being fully honest with yourself.
I think I know what they are. I think I already know which direction my heart is leaning, but saying it out loud feels terrifying, like I am making it real, and then I have to actually be accountable for it.
And that is completely normal. Big decisions are supposed to feel heavy. But once you get a real grasp of what you truly want, the choice will start to feel less like an impossible puzzle and more like an answer you already have inside you.
You know what, Carlos? Just having this conversation has helped more than I can put into words. My head is still a bit foggy, still a bit muddled, but I actually feel like I have a direction to walk in now, which is more than I had when I got here.
Good. That is progress. Take it one step at a time. Do the research, sit with yourself quietly, and trust that you have what it takes to make this call. You are smarter and more capable than you give yourself credit for.
Thank you. I genuinely needed to hear all of that today, more than you know.
That is what I am here for. Now, do you want some tea? Because you look like you desperately need something warm and calming.
I would love some tea, and something mildly irritating proof if you have it.
I will see what I can do.
All right, so that was Carlos and Nina having a really honest and deeply relatable conversation. Nina was carrying a lot, a career crossroads, a difficult work environment, and the general weight of feeling overwhelmed by it all.
And what I love about that dialogue is how naturally all of the key phrases appeared. They weren't forced in or explained mid-conversation. They showed up exactly the way they would in a real exchange between two people who trust each other.
Which is exactly how we want you to be able to use them. So let us go through every single phrase now, one at a time, with explanations, examples, and a few stories from our own lives to help everything land properly.
We will start with one of the first feelings Nina described. She said her head was all over the place and her thoughts felt muddled. The phrase we want to focus on here is to be in a muddle. This is such a rich and useful expression.
When you are in a muddle, it means your mind is confused, cluttered, and overwhelmed all at once. You are not stupid, and you are not lazy. You simply have too much happening at the same time, and your brain cannot organize it all cleanly.
It is the feeling when you sit down to work in the morning and instead of knowing exactly what to tackle first, you have 17 thoughts fighting for your attention simultaneously, and none of them are winning.
And the word muddle itself sounds a little bit gentle and even a little bit funny, which is one of the things I love about it. It takes something really stressful and describes it in a way that feels human and approachable rather than catastrophic.
I remember being in a serious muddle when I was setting up my very first apartment after moving out on my own. I had to organize furniture delivery, set up internet and electricity, register my address, open a new bank account, and start a new job, all in the space of about 10 days.
That is an extraordinary amount of admin for 10 days. How did you even function?
Barely. I genuinely made a list of things to do and then lost the list. I scheduled a delivery for when I was going to be at work by mistake. I bought a shower curtain but forgot to buy the rings to hang it. I was completely and utterly in a muddle the entire time.
That is such a relatable series of small disasters. I had a similar experience when I was coordinating a large work event for the first time, booking the venue, confirming speakers, managing the catering, organizing the schedule all at once.
And you were trying to do all of it by yourself?
Every single part of it. And predictably, I ended up sending the wrong schedule to half the speakers, confirmed the room for the wrong date twice, and walked into a colleague's meeting by accident because I had misread a calendar entry. Classic muddle behavior.
It's that feeling where your body is moving and doing things, but your brain is running about 15 minutes behind. Like you are physically present, but mentally somewhere between 10 different to-do lists.
Exactly. And the important thing to understand is that being in a muddle is temporary. It feels permanent when you are inside it, but the fog always clears eventually, especially once you start getting things done one by one.
So here are some natural ways you can use this phrase. You might say to a friend, "I've been in a complete muddle all week. I don't even know where to start." Or you could say, "She's a bit in a muddle right now with all the changes at work. Just give her a little time."
You could also use it lightheartedly. "Sorry I forgot to reply. I was in such a muddle this morning I barely remembered my own name." It is warm, it is relatable, and it immediately signals to people that you need a bit of patience or understanding.
Brilliant! Now let us talk about the phrase at the very heart of Nina's situation. She said she was facing a dilemma. This is one of those phrases that English speakers use constantly, and it is important to understand exactly what makes something a real dilemma.
A dilemma is not simply a difficult situation. It is specifically a situation where you have two options, and both of them come with genuine costs and genuine benefits. It is not a choice between something good and something bad. That would be easy. A dilemma is when both choices have something you want and something you fear.
And that is exactly what makes a dilemma so mentally exhausting, because no matter which way you choose, you are giving something up. You are always trading one thing for another. There is no free lunch in a genuine dilemma.
Nina's dilemma was a perfect example. Financial security and boredom on one side, meaning and fulfillment with financial risk on the other. Both paths are real. Both costs are real. That is a true dilemma.
Dilemmas can be small, of course. Choosing between two restaurants when you are hungry and both sound genuinely delicious. Or deciding which of two weddings to attend when they are on the same weekend in different cities.
But dilemmas can also be enormous and life-changing. Career decisions, relationship choices, where to live, whether to take a risk on something new or stay with something safe and known.
I faced one of the biggest dilemmas of my life a few years ago. I had been offered a position at a very well-regarded language school in another country, the kind of role that would look extraordinary on my professional record and open doors I had dreamed about.
That sounds like an obvious yes on paper. What was the complication?
I had just spent 2 years building real roots in my community, close friendships I genuinely valued, a local project I cared deeply about, a sense of belonging that had taken a long time to build. Accepting the offer meant walking away from all of that, and there was no guarantee any of it would still be there when I returned.
So your head and your heart were completely at war with each other.
Completely. I made lists, I talked to everyone I trusted, I lay awake at 3 in the morning running through every possible scenario. And in the end, I realized no amount of analysis was going to make one option clearly right. I just had to decide and commit.
I had something similar happen with a promotion I was offered. The role was bigger, the salary was better, the title was more impressive, but it meant relocating to a city where I knew nobody at all.
And was the location the deal breaker for you?
It was the central tension of the dilemma, yes. Professionally, it made complete sense. Personally, it felt enormous and isolating. In the end, I took the role, and it turned out well. But those weeks of sitting with the dilemma were some of the most uncomfortable of my life.
And I think that discomfort is worth naming. When you are facing a real dilemma, it is supposed to feel heavy. That weight is not a sign that you are making the wrong decision. It is a sign that both options genuinely matter to you.
So in your own conversations, you might say, I'm facing a real dilemma. I've been offered a job abroad, but my family needs me here right now. Or, she's been in a dilemma all week about whether to tell her friend the truth or let it go.
You could also say, it's a genuine dilemma. Both choices have something I want and something I'm afraid of. That phrasing captures the essence of the phrase perfectly and shows real understanding of what a dilemma actually is.
Next, let us talk about a phrase that Nina used to describe her feeling of being completely stuck. She said she was in a tight corner. And this is a phrase that captures a very specific and very uncomfortable kind of situation.
When you are in a tight corner, you feel trapped. Not just uncomfortable, genuinely trapped. You are in a difficult situation where you have very few options available to you, and every option that does exist comes with a significant cost or consequence.
Think about the image. Imagine you are physically backed into a corner of a room. There is a solid wall behind you, walls on either side, very little room to move in any direction. You cannot easily escape. That physical feeling is what this phrase captures emotionally.
And what makes a tight corner particularly stressful is that it usually involves pressure from multiple directions at once. It is not one problem with one clear solution. It is several interconnected problems closing in simultaneously from different angles.
I had a tight corner moment a few years ago during what should have been a straightforward week at work. I had agreed to cover a colleague's responsibilities while they were away, not realizing my own workload was about to explode at exactly the same time.
Oh no! So you ended up doing two people's jobs at once?
Effectively, yes. And declining was not really an option because the commitment had been made. But delivering on everything was barely possible either. I was in a complete tight corner, squeezed from both sides with no clean exit.
I had a tight corner situation that was much more personal. I had promised to help a close friend move apartments on a weekend in October, genuinely marked it in my calendar and everything. Then another close friend's grandmother passed away, and the memorial was scheduled for the same weekend.
So you had two people who needed you in completely different ways at exactly the same time.
Exactly. And either way I went, I was letting someone down. That is the hallmark of a tight corner. Not just that the situation is hard, but that every exit from the situation has a real cost attached to it.
And the emotional weight of that is enormous because it is not just about logistics. It is about feeling like you are going to disappoint someone no matter what you do. That guilt and pressure combined is genuinely suffocating.
So when you want to use this phrase, you might say, I'm in a real tight corner at the moment. I've promised too much to too many people, and I don't know how to deliver on all of it. Or, she was in a tight corner after the project deadline moved forward without warning.
You could also say, being in a tight corner doesn't mean you failed. It means you're in a situation that requires creative thinking and probably some honest conversations. That is such a useful phrase for helping people feel understood when they are struggling.
Now, let us talk about two phrases that sit on very different ends of the frustration scale, and having both of them in your vocabulary will help you describe your feelings with much greater precision. The first is mildly irritating, and the second is intensely annoying.
These two phrases matter because not all problems deserve the same emotional weight. Some things bother you briefly and you move on. Other things genuinely get under your skin and affect your whole day or even your whole week.
So let us start with mildly irritating. When something is mildly irritating, it is a small annoyance. It pokes at your patience for a moment, you notice it, you react, you might sigh or roll your eyes, and then you move on relatively quickly.
Perfect examples of mildly irritating things. Your phone battery dies at 40% because the charge cable is loose. You drop your pen and it rolls under the desk. You put on a podcast and realize after 10 minutes that you already listened to that episode.
Or, and this is my personal favorite, you make a perfect cup of tea, get distracted for 5 minutes, and come back to find it has gone completely cold. Mildly irritating. Life goes on, but you sigh deeply first.
I had a mildly irritating week once where my travel pass kept being slightly too slow to scan at the ticket barriers. Every single morning, without fail, the barrier would close in my face and I would have to try again. It never made me actually late, it just added 10 seconds of mild frustration to every morning.
That kind of thing is perfectly described by mildly irritating. It is not ruining your day, but it is adding a small, unnecessary friction to it. Now, intensely annoying is a completely different level of feeling.
When something is intensely annoying, it genuinely affects your mood, your concentration, or your peace of mind in a significant way. It is not just a background irritation, it takes up real mental and emotional space.
Intensely annoying things often involve repetition. Something that starts as mildly irritating can become intensely annoying after it happens for the 5th or 6th time without any resolution.
I had an intensely annoying situation in a previous flat. The neighbor directly above me had a habit of rearranging furniture at unpredictable hours. Not just occasionally, regularly. I would be working quietly and then suddenly hear the scraping of chairs across a floor right above my head.
At first, I imagine it was just mildly irritating.
The first few times, absolutely. But after the third week, it had moved firmly into intensely annoying territory. I started flinching whenever I heard footsteps above me because I was anticipating the furniture scraping. It had become something I could not stop noticing.
And that is the real difference. Intensely annoying things start to take up background mental space, even when they are not actively happening. You find yourself anticipating them, dreading them, thinking about them at unrelated moments.
And as Carlos so insightfully pointed out in the dialogue, when you are already stressed and your emotional reserves are depleted, the threshold changes completely. Things that would normally be mildly irritating suddenly feel intensely annoying because there is no buffer left.
So, in conversation, you might say, "The printer running out of paper again is getting mildly irritating. I filled it 3 times this week." Or, "His habit of interrupting people mid-sentence is honestly intensely annoying. It happens in every single meeting."
You could also combine them cleverly. What started as mildly irritating has officially crossed into intensely annoying territory after 3 weeks of the same issue. That sentence shows real command of both phrases and real precision in how you describe your feelings.
Okay, now let us talk about a phrase that is actually about stepping back rather than pushing forward. And I think this might be one of the most important life skills wrapped up in a single expression. The phrase is to take a back seat.
When you take a back seat, you choose to stop leading. You stop trying to control every outcome, make every decision, and carry every responsibility. You let someone else step into the driving position for a while, and you trust them to handle it.
The image comes from a car, of course. The driver is at the front. They are steering, they are watching the road, they are making all the decisions about speed and direction. If you take a back seat, you are along for the journey, not directing it.
And I want to emphasize this because it is easy to misread. Taking a back seat is not the same as quitting. It is not apathy. It is not giving up. It is a conscious, intentional choice to release control, and sometimes that requires more courage than simply pushing on.
I had a pivotal take-a-backseat moment when I was involved in organizing a community arts festival. I stepped into the leadership role early on, which felt natural, and I genuinely enjoyed it at first. But then I found it impossible to let go of any element of the planning.
Even when other volunteers had better ideas or more relevant expertise?
Even then, I would listen to their suggestions, nod politely, and then quietly do it my own way anyway. And after a while, the team started to disengage because they could feel their input was not truly being received or valued.
And how did you realize what was happening?
A trusted colleague sat me down one afternoon and said, very gently but very clearly, that the team needed me to take a back seat for a while, to step out of the driver's seat and let others steer some parts of the project.
And was that hard to hear?
Honestly, yes. My first instinct was defensive, but I sat with it overnight and realized she was completely right. I stepped back, delegated meaningfully, and the festival genuinely improved. People brought ideas and energy that would never have emerged while I was trying to control everything.
I had a similar experience during a high-pressure year when I was managing a team through a difficult organizational change. I was the kind of manager who wanted to be involved in every conversation and every decision because I thought that was how you supported people.
But there is a fine line between supportive presence and overbearing control, isn't there?
A very fine line, and I was well across it. My team eventually became hesitant to make any decision without checking with me first, which slowed everything down and quietly undermined their confidence. A mentor pointed out that sometimes the best thing a leader can do is take a back seat and let people lead themselves.
Taking a back seat is also a form of self-care. When you are exhausted and running on empty, continuing to drive is not brave, it is reckless. Sometimes the wisest move is to hand the wheel to someone capable and rest.
So in everyday conversation, you might say, "I've been managing this project single-handedly for months. I really need to take a back seat and let the rest of the team carry it for a while." Or, "She decided to take a back seat on the wedding planning and let her partner lead. Best decision they made."
You could also use it to describe something you have observed. He used to try to control everything in the kitchen at family dinners, but lately he's been taking a back seat, and the whole atmosphere is so much more relaxed. It's a phrase that speaks directly to the art of letting go.
Now for one of the most genuinely hopeful phrases in today's episode. And it is one that Carlos used at exactly the right moment to give Nina a much-needed lift. The phrase is, to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
This is a beautiful phrase. and I think most people feel it before they fully understand the words. When you see the light at the end of the tunnel, it means you are still going through a hard, dark, difficult period of your life, but you have begun to sense that it is not going to last forever.
Think about the image literally. You are walking through a long underground tunnel. It is dark all around you. You can't see the walls very well. The air feels heavy, and it feels like the tunnel might just go on endlessly.
But then, far ahead, at the very end, you catch a small, distant glimpse of light. You are still inside the tunnel. You still have a way to walk, but you can see where it ends. And that sight alone is enough to change your entire experience of walking.
You walk faster. You breathe a little easier. You feel a shift in your chest, from dread to something closer to hope. That is exactly what this phrase captures. Not the arrival at the other end, but the first moment of seeing that arrival is possible.
I had a real tunnel period a few years ago during my postgraduate studies. I was writing a long thesis on a topic I cared about deeply, but somewhere around the 6-month mark, I hit a wall. Every chapter felt incomplete. Every revision revealed new problems. Progress felt invisible.
That is one of the most demoralizing cycles in academic work. You fix one thing and immediately notice 5 other things that need fixing.
Exactly. And there were weeks where I genuinely could not see how I was going to finish. I started to wonder if the thesis would ever be good enough. I was exhausted, and I was seriously questioning my own capability. It was a long, dark tunnel.
So, what was the moment when you saw the light?
My supervisor read a draft I had been terrified to send and replied with a single sentence, "Lily, I think this is nearly there." 5 words, and something inside me completely shifted. I could see the finish line. That was my light at the end of the tunnel. I submitted 2 weeks later.
I had a comparable moment during a professional period that was genuinely difficult. I spent almost a year in a role that was wrong for me in almost every way. The culture, the management style, the kind of work. I felt diminished and stuck every single day.
How long did you stay?
About 10 months, and for most of that time, honestly, I could not see a way out that felt realistic. But then I started quietly sending applications, and I got a single callback from a company I admired. That one callback, not even an interview yet, just a callback, was enough. That was my light at the end of the tunnel. It reminded me, I am not permanently stuck. There are other roads.
And that is the thing about this phrase that I find so powerful. You do not need to be at the end of the tunnel to use it. You just need to be able to see that the end exists. That tiny glimpse of hope is genuinely enough to change your entire emotional experience.
So in conversation, you might say, "It has been a brutal few months, but I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. The project is nearly done." Or, "Keep going. The light at the end of the tunnel is closer than it feels right now."
You could also say, "After weeks of interviews, she finally got an offer. She can see the light at the end of the tunnel." It is a phrase you can use for yourself and for others, as encouragement, as reassurance, or simply as an honest description of where you are.
Now, let us look at a phrase that is a little more sobering, but equally important. Carlos warned Nina that waiting too long could mean she would come to a dead end. Let us really dig into what this means and why it matters.
When you come to a dead end, you have reached a point in a situation, a relationship, a project, or a path where there is simply no way to continue moving forward in the same direction. The road has ended. There is nothing ahead.
Just like in a car, You are driving down a road confidently, and then, without much warning, the road simply stops. There is a wall or a barrier at the end. You cannot go forward. You have to stop completely and think about a new route.
And what is crucial to understand is that coming to a dead end is not always a failure. Sometimes it is a natural and necessary conclusion. Some paths are meant to end. Some chapters are supposed to close. The dead end is not the tragedy. Refusing to accept it and turn around is.
I came to a dead end with a community project I had invested about a year of my life into. I had been running a series of live storytelling events, organizing venues, building a small audience, developing a real community around the work. I genuinely loved it.
What happened to it?
One by one, the foundations collapsed. The main venue closed. The primary sponsor withdrew. 2 key collaborators moved away. And after trying everything I could think of to keep it alive, I had to accept that the project had come to a dead end. There was no realistic way forward in that form.
And how did you sit with that?
Honestly, the acceptance was hard. There was a period of real grief because I had poured real love into that project. But accepting the dead end freed me up to think about what came next. And what came next turned out to be something I am genuinely more proud of.
That is such an important reframe. A dead end is not the end of the story. It is the end of that particular chapter. Accepting it honestly is actually what allows the next chapter to begin.
I also came to a dead end with an approach to learning a foreign language. I had been studying very diligently for about 7 months. Vocabulary lists, grammar exercises, structured lessons, and then I hit a point where nothing was improving anymore. The method had simply stopped working for me.
Did you give up on the language entirely?
Not at all. I accepted that my current approach had come to a dead end and completely changed my strategy. I started having real conversations with native speakers instead of studying from books. And within a few weeks, things that had felt stuck for months suddenly started moving again.
So the dead end was not with the goal. It was with the route to the goal. And accepting that distinction made all the difference.
In conversation, you might say, we tried everything to repair the partnership, but eventually we came to a dead end. Or, she came to a dead end with that career path and had to completely rethink her direction, and she is so much happier now.
You could also say, sometimes coming to a dead end is the most useful thing that can happen to you because it forces you to find a better road. That is honestly one of the most hopeful things you can say about a seemingly hopeless situation. Now let us look at a phrase that Carlos used when he gave Nina some really practical advice. He told her to get to the bottom of things before making any decisions. This is a phrase about seeking real truth beneath the surface.
When you get to the bottom of something, you are not satisfied with the first explanation you are given. You dig deeper. You ask harder questions. You investigate. You refuse to accept surface-level information when the real answer might be buried somewhere underneath it.
It is an investigative phrase, one that suggests real curiosity and real commitment to understanding. Getting to the bottom of something takes time and patience, but it almost always leads to better decisions than simply accepting what is most obvious.
And the reason this matters so much is that we often assume we know why something is happening, when in reality, we are only seeing the symptom, not the actual cause. Getting to the bottom of things means finding the cause.
I had a very clear example of this at a school where I was teaching. About 4 weeks into a semester, I noticed that student engagement in my afternoon classes had dropped noticeably. Participation was down, attendance was slipping, and the general energy in the room felt flat and low.
What did you initially think was causing it?
My first instinct was that the material had become too difficult and I needed to simplify my approach. But something stopped me from acting on that assumption immediately. I wanted to actually get to the bottom of things first before changing anything.
And what did you find when you did?
I had individual conversations with several students over a week. It turned out that there had been a significant falling out between two friendship groups in the class about 3 weeks earlier, and the social tension was rippling through everything and killing the collective motivation.
Completely unrelated to your teaching or the material at all.
Not even slightly related. If I had simplified the content without addressing the real issue, nothing would have improved, and I might have made the academic situation worse by underestimating them. Getting to the bottom of things allowed me to address what was actually happening.
I had a professional situation like this too. A colleague of mine was consistently missing deadlines, and the initial assumption from management was that she was disorganized or not sufficiently committed to her work.
And was that the reality?
Absolutely not. When someone finally took the time to get to the bottom of things and had an honest conversation with her, they discovered she had been waiting for critical information from another department for weeks, and that information was simply never arriving. It was a broken internal process, not a personal failing.
And once the process was fixed, the missed deadlines stopped entirely because the actual cause had finally been identified and properly addressed. If they had managed her performance instead, the real problem would have remained invisible and kept creating the same issue.
Getting to the bottom of things requires intellectual honesty. You have to be genuinely willing to find out that your initial assumption was wrong. And that requires a certain kind of openness and patience that not everyone naturally brings to problem solving.
So, in everyday language, you might say, "Before we respond to this complaint, let us take the time to really get to the bottom of what happened." Or, "She refused to accept the easy explanation and decided to get to the bottom of things, and she uncovered something nobody expected."
You could also say, "I'm not interested in quick fixes. I want to get to the bottom of why this keeps happening." That shows maturity, strategic thinking, and a genuine commitment to understanding rather than just reacting.
And we have arrived at our final phrase for today's episode. It is the phrase Carlos used to encourage Nina to understand her own priorities, and it is one of the most versatile and useful expressions in everyday English. The phrase is, to get a grasp of something.
When you get a grasp of something, you develop a genuine, solid, reliable understanding of it. Not a vague, surface-level awareness, not just knowing that something exists. A real grasp means you comprehend something fully enough to feel confident working with it.
Think about the physical action of grasping something with your hand. When you grasp an object firmly, you are holding it securely and with control. Nothing loose, nothing slipping away. Getting a grasp of an idea or a skill means understanding it with that same kind of firm, confident hold.
And I think what I love most about this phrase is that it implies process. You do not simply have a grasp of something, you get a grasp, meaning it is something you work toward over time through experience and practice, and often through making mistakes.
My clearest memory of getting a grasp on something was when I moved to a new country for the first time. There is always that disorienting period at the beginning where everything is unfamiliar. The transport system, the social norms, the rhythm of daily life, even the way people queue.
That adjustment period can be really rattling, even when you are excited about the move.
It really can. For the first month, I felt like I was constantly guessing. I took the wrong train more than once. I arrived places at the wrong time because I had misread the public holiday calendar. I misread social cues in shops and conversations. I had knowledge about the country from reading, but I had not yet gotten a grasp of actually living there.
And when did things shift?
About 6 weeks in, I had one completely smooth morning. The right train, the right stop, a clear and confident conversation in a shop, a new part of the city navigated without confusion. And I thought, I have a grasp of this place now. That moment felt genuinely triumphant.
That shift from constant effort to something approaching instinct is one of the most satisfying experiences in any learning process. I had a professional version of that when I transitioned into a new industry.
What was the move?
I came from an education background and moved into media communications. Entirely different vocabulary, entirely different expectations, entirely different ways of framing problems and measuring success. The learning curve felt almost vertical in the first few months.
How did you manage that transition?
Slowly and somewhat painfully at first. I asked a lot of questions. I made mistakes I was embarrassed by. I went home some evenings feeling genuinely out of my depth. But I kept showing up, kept learning, kept asking for feedback.
And when did you feel like you had gotten a grasp of it?
About 4 months in, I was in a strategy meeting and I noticed I was no longer just trying to keep up with the conversation. I was genuinely engaged in it. I had opinions. I was making contributions that people were responding to. I had gotten a grasp of how this new world worked. That feeling was worth every uncomfortable week leading up to it.
And that is exactly the journey the phrase describes. You do not wake up one day with a grasp of something. You earn it through consistent exposure, practice, honest feedback, and the willingness to feel confused before you feel confident.
Which is also, by the way, an excellent description of what language learning looks like. You do not get a grasp of English overnight. You get it through episodes like this one, through real conversations, through making mistakes, and asking what went wrong.
So here are some natural ways to use this phrase. You might say, I'm still working on getting a grasp of the new system. Give me another week and I'll be much more comfortable with it. Or, she got a grasp of the whole project in just 2 weeks. Genuinely impressive.
You could also say, I don't fully have a grasp of the situation yet. Let me review the details and I'll come back to you with a proper response. That sentence shows self-awareness and intellectual honesty, which people always respect.
And you can use it in combination with other phrases from today's episode. I was totally in a muddle at the start, but I'm finally starting to get a grasp of it. Or, once you get a grasp of the basics, the things that seemed intensely annoying and confusing start to feel manageable.
Getting a grasp is the reward that arrives after the muddle. It is the clarity that follows the confusion. It is the light at the end of the learning tunnel, and it is absolutely worth every moment of discomfort that comes before it. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Speak Your Mind. We have covered a lot of ground together, and I genuinely hope every single phrase we discussed today felt meaningful and useful, not just as vocabulary, but as real human language.
Let us do a final recap together so everything stays fresh. The first phrase we explored was to be in a muddle, meaning your mind is confused, cluttered, and overwhelmed, with too many things fighting for your attention at once.
Next was facing a dilemma, meaning you are caught between two options that both have real value and real cost. No clean answer, no easy exit, just two genuine roads with trade-offs on both sides.
Then, being in a tight corner, meaning you feel genuinely trapped in a difficult situation with very limited options, where every possible exit seems to carry a significant consequence or cost.
We talked about mildly irritating, a small, manageable annoyance that bothers you briefly before you move on, versus intensely annoying, A frustration that genuinely gets under your skin, takes up real mental space, and affects your mood in a lasting way.
Then, taking a back seat, the conscious, courageous choice to stop trying to lead and control everything and to let someone else take charge for a while so you can breathe and recharge.
Seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that beautiful, hopeful phrase for when you are still in a hard period, but you are starting to sense for the first time that the end of it is actually visible and real.
Coming to a dead end. Recognizing that a path, project, or approach has reached a natural conclusion and cannot continue forward. Not a failure, but a signal that it is time to find a new direction.
Getting to the bottom of things, the commitment to dig past the obvious surface explanation and find the actual, real root cause of what is happening. Choosing understanding over assumption.
And finally, getting a grasp, developing a genuine, confident, solid understanding of something through time, practice, and experience. Moving from confusion to clarity, from feeling lost to feeling in control.
9 phrases. 9 real windows into the kind of English that people actually use when life gets complicated, stressful, and beautifully human.
Our challenge to you this week is to try using at least 3 of these phrases in real conversations or in your writing before our next episode. And if you have no one to practice with right now, practice out loud by yourself. It counts more than you think.
Put yourself in Nina's position. Talk through a real dilemma you have faced using the language we covered today. Or describe a time you felt in a tight corner, or a moment when you finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel. Your stories are worth telling in full, rich English.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do share it with a friend or a colleague who is working on their English. Word of mouth is genuinely the most meaningful way for a podcast like ours to grow and reach more learners around the world.
And if you have a phrase you have heard recently and want us to explain, or a situation you want us to create a dialogue around, send us a message. We read every single one, and your ideas directly shape future episodes.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. The fact that you are showing up consistently, episode after episode, and investing real time in your own learning is something worth celebrating. Do not underestimate what that commitment is doing for you over time.
We will be back next week with a brand new episode, new conversations, and more real, powerful English to add to your growing collection. Until then, stay curious, stay consistent, and keep speaking. Bye for now.
See you next time.